smart writer.
Hey, San Francisco, I'm Ben Kaplan, and this is the podcast where we define who we are and who we want to be.
We are diverse.
We are innovative.
We are inclusive.
We are change makers.
Problem solvers.
Activists.
Leaders.
Citizens.
We are open-minded.
Optimistic.
There's hope for a better tomorrow. And you got to give them hope.
This is the podcast that's more than a podcast.
San Francisco, they are the world champions.
We are San Francisco. Welcome to We Are San Francisco. We're chatting with Danny Sauter, who is Supervisor-elect, has a nice ring to it, Danny, for District 3 in San Francisco. And to start off with, take us back to in San Francisco, it's not quite like a definitive moment where you kind of see results coming in, but you have a sense. But what was that like? Did it match your expectations? Was it different? What is it like to be a candidate who's invested so much for years and then to have it pay off?
It's an amazing feeling. So it's it's something that myself, but more importantly, so many amazing people around me invested in for a long time. We had supporters from 2020 that were back with us in 2024, and we just felt a lot of love and support from District 3, from all of our great neighborhoods. So to see it all come together, to see those first results come in on election night, it's hard to describe. It's a great feeling. It's an overwhelming feeling. It is, also one of those things where you don't want to put too much stock in those early returns because we know that they can change and that they do change.
It's like, this looks good, but like, knock on wood, don't, like this.
Exactly. We saw the first results and then we waited for the second results and we liked those as well. And then we made a little, a speech of sorts at our election night party after the second results to just say that, right? The results look good, much more to count, but we're in a good place as we are, we wanted to be. And that's exactly how election night went. And then each day after that, the results update at 4 p.m. And, those continued to look good. And so it was about 2 or 3 days after where we had just a lot of confidence that we were in the right position. We had that confidence on election night, but we wanted to kind of wait another day or two, just to be extra sure.
What did your wife say to you? What did you say to your wife? What was the emotion like? What transpired? Maybe not in front of everyone at the party, but just between the two of you.
No, I mean, it was all happening in real time, right? We got together. The first thing to know is this is everyone by this point, is in a delirious state of sorts because, we've been out campaigning all day. We started that election day. We started about 4 or 5 a.m. With campaign work, getting out one last time to people before they get up so that they see our flyers and see our door hangers on the way to the poll. And so, we're all there, on the one hand, incredibly tired and exhausted. On the other hand, running off of a high of the campaign, and all the energy and excitement around it. So it's a strange, feeling that is hard to reproduce. But in that moment, I just felt a lot of love and a lot of support from everyone in the room, from my family, from friends, from, volunteers. So it was a really fun moment.
Did anything about the results surprise you? Did you go in and do a deep dive and look at precincts and look at demographics? And District 3 has a vibrant, community of lots of different backgrounds and ethnicities and people who speak English and people who don't speak English and all of that. Did anything surprise you or anything that we can learn from your campaign and the results moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, we were really proud of the results and really happy with the results. We did well in some of the precincts and neighborhoods that we thought we'd do well in. Just some of the communities that I've had more experience and more depth in. As you think about neighborhoods like North Beach and Russian Hill, we did really well there, and that gave us a lot of room in some of the other neighborhoods that we just didn't have as much depth in. So some of the areas that, we know we need to continue to build relationships, in, neighborhoods like Lower Nob Hill and neighborhoods like Chinatown that we know, we have more room to improve and meet more residents and and kind of earn that trust. Because it's one of these things where even if you win by a large margin, you should always be humbled and always remember that 40% or 45% or whatever it is of people didn't vote for you, right? And I see that as something where it's incumbent upon me now to earn their trust and to show that even if you didn't vote for me, that hopefully I'll get to the point where that I have the best intentions in mind, and I'm going to work really hard over these next 4 years to earn your trust and hopefully maybe a vote next time.
So take us through. We get through the campaign. You're supervisor-elect. There's this interesting interim period where you're getting ready. What your actual kind of swearing in day is when? Is January
8th. January 8th. Yeah.
Okay. So take us through. I think it's maybe for people who don't know what that process is like now that you're going to be a supervisor, but you have to ramp up. There's things you have to do. There's a staff. You get an office. What sort of happens between now? What has been happening, and what happens between now and then for people who just don't know how that works?
Yeah, it's an interesting process. It on the one hand, it feels like preparing for a first day of work for a new job. On the other hand, it feels like preparing for school. There's a lot of homework to do. In terms of thinking about all the different committees and what committee you might be a good fit for, and wanting to ask for. Thinking about your new future colleagues. We've met with a number of colleagues. We've had conversations with department heads. So I think it does very quickly shift from election mode to management and governing mode, and thinking about these are the people that I'm going to work with now, and let's do everything possible to to set ourselves up for success. Some of the first calls I got after the election were from people who didn't support me, and I appreciate that because they showed that let's put that behind us. Let's figure out a way to work together, and that's really where I think the voters and the residents of San Francisco are right now, which is that they want collaboration. They want to move forward. They don't want the petty grievances of politics that get in the way of progress in our city.
Have you made any staff decisions?
Yes. So we have a chance to hire four folks on our team, and as of a couple of days ago, I've got my full team in place. So I'm very happy about that. It's going to be a mix of a few from the campaign side who are with me on the campaign team, that really bring that community experience, and then a few members on our staff who are currently with elected officials, so they'll have some more of that inside perspective, of actually working within the operations of City Hall. So I think it's going to be a really nice balance, and I'm excited.
I think one of the biggest differences is as a supervisor, you're part of the legislative body of San Francisco. That doesn't mean that there's some things you can do on your own, but most of the things you can't do on your own. So how do you start thinking in a campaign? You're mostly thinking about your own agenda, your own positions, just what would you do, and not as much thinking about practical considerations of just doing things. So how does that sort of change now? And what is your goal for, let's say, after January 8th, things that you want to move forward, your agenda, but you're a supervisor, you're not mayor, but two, even mayor, you're not king, you're not emperor, you can't do everything. What is your focus?
Exactly the process we're in right now. And so I've had a chance to sit down with the mayor-elect and, basically go through, hey, what are our respective priorities and where do they have overlap? One of the things we talked a lot about was that given that I'm representing District 3 with the financial district, with Union Square, with Fisherman's Wharf, I said to the mayor-elect, anything related to downtown recovery, anything related to tourism, hospitality, let's work on together. We both need to be leaders in that because, it's so vital to our economy, our budget, our jobs. And I think the recovery in general has been too slow on these areas concentrated on District 3 and these industries. So, that's just, for example, a priority I put forth. And we're already starting to think about some things to work together on. And it's the same thing with all the other supervisors. Some of them I know a little bit better than others. Others, we would just kind of see each other at events throughout the year, being at the same debate or being at the same forum. And so now it's a chance to get a little bit more depth to the relationship and say, you represent these neighborhoods that are completely different than District 3 neighborhoods. Where are the priorities that have overlap, right? And so, for example, there's a number of colleagues that, I had the I think responsibility of representing Chinatown, but there are, in San Francisco, kind of many Chinatowns and many, areas, whether it's the Richmond or whether it's parts of District 11 that have really rich API communities. And so, there's going to be overlap in issues and legislative priorities for a number of my colleagues, even if they are not in the same district. There's shared values and shared communities.
The Board of Supervisors in San Francisco has been quite political. There have been a lot of factions formed. There's a sort of the sense of the kind of the sort of far left progressive, or of the moderate faction, which you would probably identify with. But do you have a sense of, do we have any chance for like a reset of that and a way to work better together? Or is it truly like, yeah, everyone sings Kumbaya for like, swearing in day, and then it all goes out the window? Or do you think there's a chance that this new crew, just based on your conversations, could, maybe find ways to make it a little less political and more like progress, like results based?
I think there's a chance. I believe and I hope there's a chance. It's what I'm going to strive for. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be division that happens in any work setting, let alone in politics. So that will happen. But I think we have to remember that, think about the mandate that the voters sent when it came to mayor, right? They elected someone who has very little to no political experience, and that is both the mayor-elect's greatest strength and greatest weakness. But out of that, it was I think a resounding call for change, a resounding call for a new direction. I know that the mayor will remember that, but we better remember that as Board of Supervisors, which is that, I just think about on my campaign, I had the chance to knock over 12,000 doors myself, and very few I could probably count on one hand, the number of people at the door who asked me, hey, are you a moderate? Are you a progressive? Are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? They didn't ask that. They asked, hey, what's going on with that empty storefront across the street? It's been there for 5 years. They asked, our trash can disappeared and it's really dirty around here. Like, can you fix that? And those are the things that they asked about. Those are the things that they expect, particularly supervisors, to have their pulse on and to actually change and improve. So that's what we have to remember.
Well, and what do you think some things that, you mentioned, the kind of the mandate in this election for change, but what are some of the things that you think that like we could just look at with a fresh set of eyes that it's one of those things where like, yes, there are best practices for how, city government is supposed to work, but is best even best? Or are they just like old practices, not best anymore? What are some things that you think we could look at as more of like, oh, we have more of a mandate for change, to actually change some things that just because they always have worked this way doesn't mean they have to be that way?
Yeah, I think there's, some examples in San Francisco, but I think one of the things we don't do a good enough job of is looking at other cities and studying other cities, right? The challenges we've seen in the last few years around the drug crisis, for example, are something that have impacted most major U.S. cities, particularly West Coast cities. And we should be studying what's working in other cities. As you think about like challenges with downtown and the pandemic, those were very similar in most other major cities, but those other cities have bounced back and moved a little bit more quickly. So, for example, when we think about downtown and the massive amount of underutilized space there right now, I think in San Francisco, we have one or two office to housing conversions currently active. You go to other cities, for example, New York City just kicked off a 1,500 unit conversion from a office to a housing and apartments, right? What are they doing that we're not doing? Those are the things that I want to look at in detail. And so I think, that's an example where it's, let's look at other cities that are dealing with similar challenges, and let's steal some of the best ideas.
Well, I know. And I think one is, I always think of like Calgary, and I don't know how much you follow that, but Calgary is a great example because I think their goal was, I think, convert 6 million square feet of office space in the downtown over 10 years. And I think in the first 3 years, it was like 2 million square feet of office space. 1/3 of that was in some part of a conversion process. And so I think that's like a great example. And, to some extent, like, it would behoove us to like learn from all of the things that, and not just like, I feel like sometimes on the homeless issue, we'd kind of just like, people would say like, oh yeah, Houston. And they'd say like, Houston had some success on homelessness. And then we'd kind of like not update that for a while, just like use it for political purposes. Like we don't really want to learn the insights. We just want someone to have an example to back up our insight, as opposed to on an ongoing basis. I mean, that would be amazing if you were the supervisor to do that, to actually bring in that data on a consistent basis. And I do think there's some great examples in, point of Calgary, not all in the US also.
Yeah, very well said.
What about the inner workings? Like, have you thought about things like, who is going to be, like last time around, who is going to be president of the board of supervisors? That was a, multi-round. It didn't seem like it was going to be, your predecessor in District 3, Aaron Peskin, and then it ended up being, have you thought about that? Have you heard about that? Is there discussions about that? What goes on leading up to something like who's going to be president of board of supervisors?
Yeah, there's certainly been discussions. I mean, it's it looks like we have a few highly qualified candidates. These are some of the members that are a little bit more senior, which I think makes sense, especially in this climate, to really have a steady, experienced hand at the helm. I'm just in a mode right now where I'm listening to pitches, and I'm listening to arguments on why one person might have a different style than another. I will say that the candidates that I know of and the candidates that have made the pitch to me, I think again, I think we'd be in good hands. This is not a it's not a situation where I would I would feel like we'd be going down a wrong path with any of the choices. We are, to your point earlier, I think we are now a board that is not as extreme as some of the last class was in ideology, in just in presentation and in practice. And so I feel confident about our board that we have this incoming class.
You said that, as you pointed out, with Mayor-elect Daniel Lurie, this is sort of a change election. There's a mandate for change. And yes, we could go with an experienced person on the board of supervisors, but like we also could not. We could also just like go for change and let's mix it up and let's bring a fresh set of eyes. You had a very successful campaign. You weren't someone that it was a nail biter down to the end. You're also from District 3. It's at the economic core of San Francisco. So why not Board of Supervisor President Danny Sauter?
Well, you're going to get me in trouble now with that idea.
I'm seriously making a suggestion, but I'm also just saying, why not? Why should it be tenure on the Board of Supervisors that chooses this? Why not have a fresh perspective?
Yeah, and look, I was reminded that is actually what David Chu did when he came in 2008. He won his election. He was a new supervisor, and he was then quickly elected to be board president. So it has happened. I think it's a question of, we have a new mayor. We have 4 of our 11 board members, 4 of our 11 new supervisors are totally new. So I think it's possible, but there also is, something to be said at this moment as we face some challenges of, balance. And I think that's what we'll see where it ends up.
If you had one thing you could do on the board, I've asked you this before the election, sort of the magic wand question, which is one thing you could do as supervisor. Now we're sort of going beyond, but like one thing you could do in the body of the board. What would you do, given what you know of the board of supervisors now? If you were like, yep, Danny, today you get to implement one thing, one change of the way the board works, what would you do?
You get asked this question over the course of a campaign a lot, and you're right. Now it starts to, I think it starts to change right now as you're like transitioning to office. I imagine my answer, in 6 months or a year might be a little different as well, because you have to kind of blend like what's possible with what you really want, right? I think at this moment, like I'm thinking about the first few months on the board, and how we how we have the right start, and how we set the right tone, both myself and our entire board. And, some of the things that I've already expressed that I want to work on very early on with other board members, we talked about everything related to downtown. I think that there is so much low-hanging fruit as it relates to the burdensome permits that stand in the way of small businesses in our city, particularly in District 3. A lot of the changes that have improved the small business climate in San Francisco in the last few years actually carved out District 3. And so there's a lot of changes that don't apply to District 3. For example, flexible use retail is still banned in most of District 3. This idea of having two uses under one roof, if you want to have a bookstore and a coffee shop under one roof, you can't do that in most of District 3. And so that's a very specific example that I point to where, let's start with some of the low-hanging fruit like that, and then let's build up from there. I think so much of what the task at hand is restoring confidence in San Francisco, and that is restoring confidence in the government as a service provider of clean and safe streets. It is San Francisco as a brand when you think about conventions coming back, when you think about tourism coming back. And that's the challenge. And it's going to take hard work. It's going to take kind of, the perception and the reality. But that's what I'm looking forward to working on.
Have you had productive, helpful conversations with your predecessor in this position, Aaron Peskin? Not really from your political faction in San Francisco, but has there been a smooth transition? Did the staffs talk to each other? How has that gone?
We're sitting down next week to dig into kind of how his office has worked and to take any best practices. It's a situation where yes, our policies and politics that have differed through the years, but someone like that has been around for so long, that has a really intimate understanding of the city, how it works and where it doesn't work. I'm going to take any and all advice and any and all knowledge from someone like that. And it's also one of these things that I'm really quickly learning that, despite differences in politics, there is, it's really important for a supervisor, particularly supervisor staff, to have a lot of focus on constituent services. It's kind of the customer service angle of this job, knowing that, and I'm already getting this, but it's going to only increase, which is that, people, an average voter, an average resident, they might not know, which of the dozens of departments to reach out to, which of the 34,000 city employees to talk to. So they're going to come either to mayor, or more likely they're going to come to their district supervisor. And so you have to act as a conduit and to kind of connect them with whatever the resources, whatever the departments, the individuals, to get their problems fixed in the city. And that's something that I've seen. There's been moderate supervisors who do that well. There's been moderate supervisors who do that poorly. And I think that when you think about re-election or about, just having a good, successful term in office, it is that customer service, that constituent service that I've observed really actually makes a difference. Less so the political leanings.
You mentioned re-election. The nature of this, do you have to start like what happens for 2028? Do you start? Does this stop? Does it not stop? Do you start thinking about that? How do you think about that? Because it just seems like from U.S. president all the way down, it gets earlier and earlier and earlier. So how do you think about re-election now, given what you've just been through?
Yeah, it does seem that way. I'm not thinking about it. I think my priority is to start well. In this term, there's even, campaign things we're still from this year that we're still finalizing and closing out. So, it is something where I think it is common, within a year or two for someone to open up a committee for their future one, just to have that as an option. I think the challenges I see in District 3 are things that they're certainly going to keep me busy these next 4 years. And if it's work that I think we're making progress on, and if it's work that I think I still have a good perspective and good ability to lead on, then we'll look at the re-election.
Do you see yourself as someone who is a government servant, a politician? Is this your sort of vocation, career moving forward? I mean, will you look at all kinds of options as you advance?
The way I approach this is public service, particularly community organizing within neighborhoods. And, that's what led me here. That's how I started in our neighborhood association, joining the board, becoming president, working on a lot of projects in the neighborhood. And, it's always a question of where can you be of best service at a particular point in time. I'm not, I don't have a path set out that, has different timelines and different roles that I need to be in. I think it's politics for me, and ask me this in the future, but right now politics for me is a way to make changes, particularly these really specific focused neighborhood changes in District 3. And I think that's an amazing opportunity, and it's one I'm very excited about.
What lessons do you learn from this whole journey from you? I mean, for those people who don't know, I mean, you ran for District C Supervisor before, ran a surprisingly, I think, which gave you a bit of momentum, competitive race with Aaron Peskin, been in there a long time before. You didn't win that one, but that kind of gave you some momentum. But then you had to, you were continuing to community organize. You did things like, study Chinese language, and which gave you a better ability to talk to. So you invested years in this process. What do you learn from that? What do you do others who might be interested in getting involved, running for office? What is the lessons from that whole journey?
I think the lesson is start early, and pick something up that is an opportunity for people to see the type of work that you can do and that you will do in office. I had so many people who would say to me that they felt like I was already doing this sort of work, even before being elected by supervisor, or I've already made a big impact in the neighborhoods, and that was really exciting to see. That was also something that gave us a lot of confidence going into the election. I think people want to see their candidates and see their options. At some point in the campaign, everyone starts to sound very similar. You start to have similar ideas, or at least the ideas sound similar. So people are going to then look at backgrounds, experience, commitment to the neighborhoods. And I think, in our race, for example, we had someone who moved into this district last year just to run for office. And I think that, voters did see through that, and voters want a commitment to the district and the Sauter neighborhoods, especially in a race like supervisor, which is all about representing very specific neighborhoods, very specific challenges. So, if you're interested in a supervisor seat in the future, start now, make an impact in your particular community and neighborhood so that people see that commitment and see what sort of leadership and style you might bring to office in the future.
Well said. Congratulations, Danny Sauter, a supervisor-elect to District 3. Well done. I think sometimes people don't realize how much of a personal sacrifice it is and how much of an investment it is. But, at many events around town, I always saw your face there and you were there, and there's no guarantee at the end that it all works out. You do it kind of as a leap of faith. And sometimes, I'm guessing this, correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes, at times no one believes in you, and you just got to believe in yourself. And so it's a great story. And just from our interactions, I just know couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. So congratulations, and well done, and kind of inspirational for others who are willing to put in the work that good things can happen.
Thank you, Ben. That's tremendously kind, and I'm excited, and thank you for those kind words.
Thank you so much.